Hey, it's Ryan, and today we're going to be installing a Holman partition or bulkhead in the back of our Ford Transit Connect. Let's get into it. The tools we used for this install were a set of socket wrenches and extensions, an 11mm socket, 13mm socket, Torx T50 bit, vice grip, and for an optional part of the install we used a drill with a 3/16 inch bit and drill stop, as well as an impact driver to speed things up. Alright, like I said, we're installing our Holman partition in our Ford Transit Connect. It's part number 40670. What I like about this partition for the Ford Transit Connect is we actually don't have to do any modification to the vehicle to get the partition in, meaning there are factory holes and everything that Holman takes advantage of to install this partition, where there are some other partitions out in the market where you have to drill into the van or modify it in some way to get the partition to fit. So this makes it a pretty easy install. The other thing about this partition in general is it fits the ProMaster City as well as the Nissan NV200, which is basically the same as the Chevrolet City Express. So there's a lot of different applications for this particular partition. We're using it on the Transit Connect. The installation is going to be slightly different on different vehicles, so just take that into account. And this video does not replace the installation manual provided by the manufacturer, so be sure to grab yours out of the box or download it from the website, and let's get into it. Okay, so we need to start with some minor assembly outside of the vehicle. And the first thing that we're going to do is take our two large pieces of our partition and attach them with carriage bolts. And so this is the lower portion here, and the upper portion is the one that's perforated. Now, the nice thing about the installation instructions from Holman is they have hardware that's to scale, and there's a lot of different carriage bolts. So the carriage bolts you need are actually the 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch, so you can take those and make sure you're using the right hardware on this particular step. So I have this laying down with the flanges on the sides pointing up, because if I lay it like this, I need to be able to access the nuts to tighten them, and the nuts are going to be on this side. And so if it's in this orientation, the top panel is going to go on the bottom, and the bottom panel is going to go on top. I'm just going to take my carriage bolts, slip it through underneath here, and I got a flanged nylon lock nut. Love these rather than having to use a lock washer and a nut. Now I'm just coming through here with a, what is this? 11mm socket. Getting these nice and tight. So the next thing we need to do is bolt on our wing panels onto the side. These are your upper wing panels, a little bit smaller, and then your lower wing panels look like this. So just a little note about orientation. These are going to go on the outside of the partition, and these point down. There is a little angle bent into the top of the lower wings. These want to angle towards, kind of follow the same angle of the partition. It's going to go like this on the outside, and then your nuts, kind of like these ones, are going to be on the inside, and your carriage bolts will be on the outside. And so it's just attaching all of these, and we'll do that now. We're using the same hardware you use to connect the top partition to the lower partition. You do need to connect these two wings together, but you do want to leave this farther outside hole empty without a nut in there, or a bolt in there. Now that I got everything kind of loosely in place, I'm just going to go through with a socket wrench, tighten these up. Okay, now that we have these all tightened, I'm actually going to flip this over so we can do the next part. So up until this point, the installation has been the same between the ProMaster City and the Nissan NV Chevy City. But this is where the Connect differs, is because we're going to mount these mounting plates to the bottom of the partition. We're gonna need our 5/16 by 3/4 inch carriage bolts. These are there's only 4 of these in your hardware pack. And then these have a lock nut as well. These are not flanged. Again, these are the only 4 that you have in the kit, so they'll be easy to find. And then just the same washers we've been using. So for mounting these, it's gonna mount in this orientation. So we have these 2, ovular shapes on the bottom, and then we have this kind of part that sticks out. We want the right angle to be towards the inside of this partition. So we're gonna go through here with our carriage bolt through. We're using the 2 outermost holes. Same thing, but mirrored on the other side. Now on the bottom, there's elongated holes, and then there's just regular size holes. We're going through the elongated sized holes. Then I'm going to use a 13 millimeter socket on these, and I'm just going to get them nice and tight and snug, but still allow for movement. All right, next we want to prep our upper mount for the Transit Connect. We have this long piece here. You can see it's kind of got an angled cut on one of the sides. So this is going to be facing upwards. And then we want to take our 2 L brackets here. These are going to go on the outside. We're going to mount them through like this. And they're actually going to be angled a little bit, but we'll just leave it loose for now. And for this, we're going to be using our 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch carriage bolts. It's the same size that we use these ones, but they're a little bit longer. We can use the same flange, lock nuts, and washer. So again, we just want these loose enough to get them nice and tight, but we can still move them because it's gonna be easier when we're mounting this in the van if we have a little bit of movement in here. So now we're gonna attach this upper mount to the top of our partition, and we're gonna use these same carriage bolts that we used for attaching the top and bottom together. It's the 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch carriage bolt, and we're gonna go through the top, through the mount, then through the top of the partition, washer, flange, lock nut, and we're gonna attach it right now. And just like a lot of the hardware on here, I'm getting these nice and snug tight, but going to allow for some movement. All right, so now I'm just gonna do a little bit of prep inside the vehicle. First, I need to remove these 2 D-rings on the front. We've got an aftermarket floor in here, and so we don't have the D-rings, but we do have these bolts, so we need to get those out. Then I'm gonna move the seat forward as well. This is just a T50 Torx bit on a little impact. So one thing I'm finding with putting this partition in is we have an aftermarket floor in here that's quite a bit thicker than the factory floor, and so trying to scooch this in place, I don't want to scratch it all up and stuff like that. So I'm actually going to remove this top mount, then kind of get it in place and reattach it. So in most installations, you're going to use this plastic spacer that's going to sit between your factory bolt, the plate, and then the floor or the mounting location. But because we have this aftermarket floor in here, it's actually the same thickness as this washer, and so our D-ring bolt here fits pretty, it's pretty a tight fit with this floor in here. So we're not going to use these spacers, but typically, you'd have the bolt, then the mounting plate, then this, then through the factory mounting location. You do reuse the D-ring bolts for this, so don't throw those out. Okay, now in most vans there is black foam spacers that are mounted right here above the doors. These are held on with just some plastic clips. If you use some trim removal tools, you can pull those clips out. And there's glue on the forward one that you just can rip it out. We have them removed already because we have ceiling liners installed in our van. And so the next step after that is you're going to actually mount these upper brackets to some existing holes up here next to this door, sliding door slide, if you will. And you have 2 options. You can either use these hex bolts that have a little threading tip on them, and you're just gonna go right into the hole. That's easy because they basically turn these pre-existing holes into threaded holes. Or you can use these hex bolts that are a little bit smaller with some washers and some lock nuts to secure it back here. It's just a little bit harder to fit a nut up there, but it is a more secure installation. So we're gonna try and do that first. And if we can't figure it out, we'll move to the easy method of these self-threading screws. So if you decide to go the route of using the standard bolt, this actually uses an 11, just like the carriage bolt nuts we were using on it throughout. If you decide to go the self-threading route, this actually uses a 13 millimeter. So really 2 ratchets or 2 socket sizes we had to use for this whole install, which is nice. I find it's helpful to use a rubber mallet and just a block of wood, you know, when it's a little bit tight. The ceiling liner is making it tight for us, so I'm having to do a little bit of tapping just to get everything in place. All right, got those snug, but still kind of loose. Now our final step is going to be to support this to the B pillars, which is just this pillar that's in between the sliding door and the front door. And there's these brackets that you can use to attach to that vacant slot. Remember, we left open on the side of the partition. And you want to use a carriage bolt along with this bracket to secure it somehow to this B pillar. Now, this is an optional step, so you don't have to do this. We're going to try and find a spot on the B pillar to attach this bracket to. So same type of deal with attaching this. We're using a washer and a lock washer to connect the bracket to the side. I'm just gonna leave it loose for now. So as you can see, I've got the L bracket here. The longer end actually goes over to the side here into the side of the B pillar. On the inside, you can see same thing with a washer and a lock nut. Now for attaching to the B pillar on the Transit Connect, you can see we've got this plastic trim here, but I don't know if you can see back there. There's not much behind it. So we really only have one of these holes that we can use to tie into the side there. And so we've got a couple of options that Holman gives us with this kit. So we've got this hex bolt with this self-tapping screw, or we have a sheet metal screw. So it's really what's gonna work better. You can see here what we have to go through. It's just a little piece of sheet metal. I don't think it's reinforced at this point. So we're gonna try and go through with our hex bolt. Now this is pretty thick self-threading bolt to be able to go right through this sheet metal here. So I'm actually gonna drill a pilot hole. So I've got my drill bit here. I do have a drill stop on there so I don't go too deep and actually, you know, hit something that could be back there. So that might be something to consider if you're going to be drilling in. All right, you can see I've got my pilot hole drilled there. Okay, and now I've got this bracket attached there nicely with that self-threading hex bolt. And I'm gonna tighten this up here on the side. So again, mounting to the B pillar is optional with this kit. If you don't end up wanting to do that, you're gonna wanna use these same carriage bolts that you used to attach the wings and the top to the bottom with a washer and a lock nut. Now, why would you wanna attach it to the B pillar? If you remember a partition, the primary purpose is a safety purpose. So if you're hauling cargo, stuff shifts, you get an accident, all comes crashing towards the driver. If you don't have this B pillar, you know, then you're just relying really on these 2 points down here and these points up here to protect you. So this really just reinforces it, gives really a strength, some rigidity right down the center of the partition here into this B pillar. So, you know, that's just an added safety option. You know, it's really simple to install, so I would recommend doing it. So our last and final step is to tighten all that hardware that we told you to leave loose at the beginning. So I'm gonna go through and tighten all that right now. So that just about does it for the installation of this partition in our Ford Transit Connect. If you're looking for this partition or any other equipment to make your van work ready, be sure to check us out at upfitsupply.com. Again, my name is Ryan, and have a good one.